off guard as he arrives to inspect preparations at Nyayo Stadium, the venue of tomorrow's state funeral service for former President Daniel Arap Moi. The body will be flown to Mzee Moi's final resting place at Kabarak on Wednesday morning. And as you can see right there, the line of those who had gone to look at the late president's body, of course, as it lay in rest at the Parliament buildings, as you can see right there. They said over 100,000 Kenyans went over the weekend so far, and you have one more day to do that. Front page of the Standard, Mzee Moi braved gunfire at home. In testimony to the bravery that defined President Moi, soldiers reflect on his calm demeanor in one of the most tumultuous periods of his presidency as thousands queue to view his body. At least 10 heads of state and representatives are expected for his funeral service tomorrow. That's a story that is in the Standard this morning. On the Star, Moi felt he was next after JM karaoke murder. Was often deprived of security at a time when assassinations were common, and this was an issue that really, kept him aware of the political realities of the day. And finally, front page of the Business Daily, top 5 listed companies hold 73% of NSE wealth. Safaricom, Equity, EABL, KCB, and Co-op Bank account for 1.85 trillion shillings at the Securities Exchange. You can get that story and plenty more in your copy of your Business Daily this morning. Let's get to my panel, of course, and talk about the big story of the day, of course, even as we wait for the late president's interment later on in the week. Joined this morning, Dennis Thumbi, political analyst. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
Once again, Griffin Somwenga, a political analyst as well, was breathing fire the last time he was here. Welcome back.
Thank you, Jeff.
We also have Freddy Kokango, SG Third Way Alliance. Welcome.
Thank you.
A lot has been happening on your political front as well. How are things now?
And they will continue to happen.
And they will continue.
Yes.
But such is the nature of the beast. We'll be discussing that, of course, later in successive shows. And you also have Nerima Mako as well, Director of Siasa. Please, good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
As we had 3 days to view the late president's body at Parliament buildings, what has been happening, even as we had that, we've been taking a walk down memory lane and looking at what's been going on so far, the lessons that we've learned even as we move forward, and the memories that we've had of either President Moi as a person or under his administration. What's yours, Dennis?
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me and having me here, and good morning, viewers. I think the passing on of President Moi really has extremely critical lessons for our nation, Kenya. And I think it's important for us never to forget history and never to forget where we are as a country. Because I've seen equal hate and equal love for President Moi. But if we just dare to go back to history, is that President Moi ruled us for 24 years, relinquished power, by the way, 2002, 18 years later. 18 years later. In fact, if you remember then, I was there at Uhuru Park, and the president was quite embarrassed. He drove through a very murderous crowd. There was an uprising, technically. And if you remember, Moi handed over power to now President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. He handed over his KANU regime succession to our president now, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Now, watch this. The public then, and of course the opposition that was going against Moi's succession politics and all that, was President Kibaki, and there was a landslide victory. Kenyans rejected Moi's choices. But a few years later, we returned President Moi. Mm-hmm. But the most interesting thing is that even though we blame Moi for all our problems, and we were left to our devices, 18 years later, we haven't shown anything incredible, anything different. Politics, in fact, in the country has succumbed further to high interest rates, nothing to write home about. So the thing to ask ourselves is, will Kenya really mature, or will Kenya really come out and discuss democracy itself? Because what technically we say Moi denied us was democracy. And there are people who see Moi as a hero, there are people who see Moi as a villain. But what we didn't have then, and we have it in a new constitution, is in democracy. But 18 years later, Kenyans returned the KANU regime, but we are unable to make choices that help this country. That 18 years later, after Moi relinquished power, we haven't been able to do anything incredible politically in this country. We haven't been able to make choices advised for the goodwill of this nation. We have in fact been the most demagogic country, a country that chooses leaders that bring this country down. And you know, it's interesting for us as Kenyans to reflect and to look at ourselves in the mirror and to honestly say, will we ever liberate this nation, or the nation is completely doomed whatsoever? Because if you look at the future of this nation, it almost sounded like Moi is still the president now. It almost sounded like Moi never gave back power back in 2002. You know, if you look at 2002 and 2020, it's almost like an inverted 02 and 20. But the truth of the fact is that why have we been unable to make gains in democracy? Why haven't we been unable to live a constitutional dream that 2010 gave us? Why, when Moi relinquished power and there was an uprising, and if you looked at it, by the way, Kibaki never acknowledged Moi. In his speech, in his inaugural speech, he never at any one point recognized his predecessor. But the truth is, why have we as a people been unable? Because the truth is, history may repeat itself, but history can be prevented based on the choices that you make at the moment that you don't want to see an ugly future coming on.
Griffins, I'll come to you, and I just tweak that statement slightly from Dennis, because some people say the reason why much hasn't changed is because when you look at the political playing field, it's the same people. The same people who were there during Moi's time, either as mentees learning the game or active politics as well, are the same people we have now. Why would we expect a different result, Griffins?
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. I think if you look at the history of this country, Moi used to have a common thing about Kano at that time, that Kano would rule for over 100 years. And true to that, you see, look at Ruto right now. He's the vice president of this country. Ruto was there in K92. So still Moi had seen this. The current president, Uhuru Kenyatta, on Stumbia said, you see, that was Moi's, you know, when he was just at Kasarani and he said, Leo nimeona kijana hapa, and I want to introduce him. That is the time that the Kibaki, Raila, Saitoti walked out and they formed the NAC coalition. So you see, ideally, it's the same people. The only thing that has changed are the political outfits that they are using currently. If you look at almost everybody that is in Jubilee today, even if it's ODM, at least at some point, almost everybody that is in senior positions in government actually served in Moi's government, or in one or the other, they learned something from Moi. So you can actually say that Kanu is still there, and you can see Moi's strides in almost every sphere of government. In as much as we might try to say that there's a little bit of democracy, but it's because I think the constitution was changed. And that's why we are enjoying some of those constitutional freedoms that Moi wouldn't allow us. You know, right now, somebody can stand up and tell President Uhuru Kenyatta anything. In times of Moi, even mentioning his name, I think, was a criminal offense. I remember growing up in the village, and that time we had Mahindras. I remember sitting with my uncle as a young boy, and in the village there's a certain corner. When the Mahindra would be seen and guys are seated, I could see my uncles all dashing to the shambas. Because that was Moi, you know. He could be felt even, I mean, he was like omnipresent. A story is told about one MP from Kirinyaga that time went and told Mzee, the people of Kirinyaga love you so much. And Moi was like, but you went to that meeting very late. So that was Moi for you. And he said that Kanu would be there for over 100 years. So if you look at, just try to analyze even top guys in government, whether in the government or the opposition. Fred, do we have opposition right now? Anyway, it's a story for another day. So, yeah, Moi was right.
Okay, and
sure.
it's just the prophecy being fulfilled.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's move to Bwana SG of the Third Way Alliance, and at least who can weigh in as far as the political field is concerned. Because as we've said, we look at the playing field now. These are the same people who are there in the previous administration, in Moi's time as well. Yet we have an electorate and a citizenry that yearns change. It's the same people there, but it's the same people who are in the field. Why you've come with a new outfit? What usually makes it so hard for fresh blood to be seen on the field?
Thank you, Jeff. First of all, I think it is important to note that President Moi, during his time, he was very keen on occupying this country at any given time using people that he believed would help him succeed for the years he wanted to rule. And that's how he managed to create young politicians who were very loyal to him, and he used to reward them. You remember during that time, President Moi had the young politicians. Young politicians who were not elected, but were working for KANU as loyalists. And they could do anything to ensure that President Moi succeeds. And then they were elected who were in parliament and could do anything to ensure that Baba Moi succeeds. When they said Nyayo, it is Nyayo. It was not Nyayo, and then at the end of the day, it is something else. Now, I think what happens is, at that time, the young politicians were also looking at developing their areas so that they can woo voters when the time comes. Look at, for example, schools. All the schools, almost all the schools that were named after Moi in the entire country, in terms of infrastructure, they're well equipped. In terms of teaching staff, they're well equipped. In terms of roads, those areas, they're well equipped. So it means there's a legacy that he started, and he managed to progress that legacy throughout his lifetime. And therefore, in terms of politics, real politics, the people who were around Moi at that time were using the name Moi also to benefit their regions. And that's why he managed to be what he is. But today, we have got multi-party democracy. And when he said that KANU will rule for 100 years, it is true. While we have got different political parties, I can dare say that apart from one or two or three, majority of those parties are still held by people who passed under Moi's hand. I'll give you an example. Wiper under Kalonzo Musyoka. Kalonzo Musyoka was a Moi person. President Uhuru Kenyatta is political son to Moi. DP Ruto is political son to Moi. Mudavadi of ANC is political son to Moi. The KANU itself now, by Gideon, that is biological son, you know. So all these big players at one point passed through Moi. But because of multi-party democracy and, you know, political competition, they had to go separate ways in a contest, but ideologically, they are the same people. Now, this brings to the question, how do we ensure that even with multi-party democracy, we now progress to a stage where in election, the people can actually decide and choose leadership that is not what we used to have before? It will be very difficult. In fact, we'll need a face-off in the next maybe 10, 20 years so that can happen. Today it cannot happen because we are mobilized in terms of regions. And most of the people that Moi managed to groom were coming from regions. And these are the people that have positioned themselves today for leadership. So it will be difficult to say that this is Moi, this is not Moi. In fact, as a matter of fact, everyone today who believed that they benefited from Moi, like I saw one of the interviews with the deputy president, and he said that Moi used to reward them when they're in the university. There are quite a number of those who today are not in position of leadership as such, but they were in cabinet, they were in provincial administration, and Moi rewarded them. They still hold a lot of influence in their region. It will be difficult to erase the picture of Moi from our country for a very long time. Because Baba Moi, as people used to call, I remember when I was very young, when he used to line along the road, he's passing the songs, and then when he passes, his presence will be felt for another month, and he has just passed for 5 minutes, another one. So that means, even today as he's lying there, may God rest his soul in peace, people still look at him as somebody who in one way affected their lives, whether directly or indirectly.
Nerima, I'll come to you even as we get to the first break of the show. What's your biggest memory, either from the person, president, or his administration, or from history, if it's where you've gotten it from, as far as the president is concerned, and especially with regards to the youth, because it seems like the youth question has been the same all through. We're still talking about unemployment. We're still talking about opening more opportunities for the youth, and that has been something that has been there throughout different administrations. It's the same thing you're grappling with now.
Yes, yes. I think there are two memories that I have. I actually had the chance to meet Moi when I was about 8 years old. And I can remember the preparations that it took. You know those little girls who give him flowers when he arrives at a function? I was
That
one
was
of
you?
them. Yeah.
Wow.
And it took almost 3 days of rehearsing how I'm going to walk to him, to hand the flowers, to curtsy, to say, these are for you, Mr. President. And I can remember how there was so much pressure in the preparation to the point where it almost felt that things had to be perfect. And even at that age, being able to see adults around you panicking in preparation for his arrival, and including days previously, can show you the amount or the magnitude of his presence. And the other memory that I do have was in 2002. I do remember being in town at the time, and a NAC kind of caravan was passing, and Charity Ngilu was on top of it, waving at people. There was a large crowd of people, and I can remember that moment when he actually handed over. And it was something that I thought it was so historic and energetic for that age, because even though I was just like a preteen, I almost felt that we are changing this country. There was a sense of we have control of it, even as a young person. We can dream for a better Kenya. But I do think what I've witnessed in the changes is the amount that we have put. I don't think we realize how historic this moment is. For a lot of us, it's why is it being filmed for all these days, all these hours, watching people watch him. And it's a little bit strange for some. I do know that on social media, the things that people are saying, the hashtags that some have run, there's no way we would have been able to say those things in the 90s or even previously. I do believe that there's a change when it comes to our democracy and our freedom of speech. I did see a lot of former politicians mad, very mad with what young people are saying online, and just basically saying, you know, you're very disrespectful. How can you say such things about an iconic leader? And it shows us the dimensions of the generations, because even though in our history, people that we would view as political enemies are actually now paying their respects to Moi. And it almost shows you that, yes, it's true, when it comes to politics, there are no real enemies. And I think young people should realize that it's political. And even to go and look at old videos and to see how Odinga paid respect to Jomo Kenyatta when he passed on. It makes you wonder, is Raila Odinga going to do something different? Because he had a whole ceremony on his own for very many minutes. The same way we've seen our former President Mwai Kibaki actually close out the public and have this moment alone with former President Moi. So you see a lot of culture, tradition, and a sense of authority that he still holds even in death. And I don't think that a lot of youth realize how Moi has impacted our lives and his family as well. But yes, problems are still economy, but factually, during Moi's era, the economy was doing better. And a lot of people will argue, well, the population has increased, but if you compare it to the population, it was doing better. When we talk about schools, like what Fred has just talked about, Moi did build thousands of schools. Right now, we're having issues of schools not coming up. We're seeing children learning under trees and huts, things that Moi was very passionate about, which is education. And so we have very few schools that are being constructed right now by the government. And so you can still see his hand in an era of the past that made a difference. That right now, if we had those same attributes, we would see a different Kenya when it came to access and education.
Okay. And of course, we'll be taking your views as well. You can get us at K24 TV. You can also SMS us on 21222, even as we get into the first break. As we come back after the break, we're talking about the different sectors as far as the country is concerned. Because like Anirima alluded to, him being a teacher, of course, education very close to his heart. But looking at the economy as a whole, look at the country as a whole, how far have we come along as administrations have changed hands as far as the betterment of the people are concerned? We talk about that and more after the break.